right.
Sir?
No, we'll explain.
No,
Okay.
that's Spaniard, that's yours.
If you go and look at what's on rap areas.
Okay, so those two videos were obviously in very like different modes of thought, like very different veins, and so I guess what we were kind of going for is that the first one is kind of, if you wanted to talk about censorship, you actually wanted people on YouTube to watch it and like retain it. Like this is the kind of video that you have to make. It has to be like comedic. It has to like have, I don't know, some kind of like maybe a little twist or like, and like the message itself can't be, I don't know, what carries the video. It kind of has to be like the form and, I don't know, like Ben's talent with voices, you know? Like that's what's carrying that video. It's not him being upset that freedom of speech is being removed. And then the second video is obviously like much more of like an analysis, kind of in the academic vein. And what we were going for with this is that we found the guy speaking that we undercut, he has like this 9-minute video talking about how all of the censorship on YouTube is not actually what we think of as censorship, because what we think of as censorship is like done by a government entity to like the public. But YouTube censorship is all about flagging. So it's all about the community like censoring itself. It's like his comment that like the videos are never even looked at unless other people flag them. And so his whole thesis is that censorship on YouTube is actually just about like gang warfare, in which like different pressure groups like try to censor each other's ideas. And so he's kind of calling for like an end to this like mode of thinking where the Muslims like go and flag the anti-Muslim videos, and then the Christians go and like flag the anti-Christian videos, and et cetera, and so it's just like this kind of like neutralization of thought, and he claims that it's like very oppressive to speech in general. And I guess just this was kind of just supposed to raise the idea that like the censorship on YouTube is like it can be arbitrary, but it's like at its like foundation it's a user kind of directed process. And so that raised the question for me, well, does that mean that even though YouTube has censorship, is it still like democratic if the censorship process itself is kind of like a democratic way of going about it?
Because we really didn't think that videos were looked at unless they were flagged. We really got that impression. And so that's one part of this is the democratic self-policing of the site among the users. And the other part, which is something we all ascertain, is that things that are acceptable are things that are more acceptable in Western ideology. Sexuality with humor is okay, and violent videos, if they're like okay for America, like there's gonna be way more of these Saddam videos than like the Abu Ghraib ones, I think I found. Other things like there's like really graphic surgeries for like medical students to watch, and like, but then they'll take down a lot of like natural unassisted childbirth videos, and then well, things that are more medical and are left up and more graphic.
It's just the whole idea of like the pressure groups being able to like kind of define what is acceptable and what is not. And like, I don't know, for people who watched our like thesis video, how it had like things that looked like sexually explicit, and people were like, well, how can these be on YouTube? And what we wanted to include this, but we ended up like, we didn't have the footage, but like those were actually kind of like, they were made okay because they're cloaked by humor, in that right after where we cut those videos, it's like revealed that they're jokes. Like the woman's trying to like unzip the guy's zipper, but it like gets stuck.
And it's
like,
an ad for like
and it's like
phone.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's funny because it's ads, and well, the one with the woman like making noises.
Yeah, she's
actually about to sneeze.
And so like
there's all these montage of people you think are having an orgasm when they're about to sneeze.
So it's like well, it can be explicit, and the girl talking about like oral sex, like the content of her speech is very explicit, and like I mean, there's no way that that would, but then, like, you'd think that would be acceptable, but because, like, the visual is just like this girl talking, then suddenly that's, like, made acceptable, whereas, I
And
mean,
it's just kind of like funny. So.
yeah, whereas obviously if she's actually, like, performing oral sex, I'm guessing that would have been, like, taken down. So, I don't know, we were just kind of going for the weird, like,
Fringes of YouTube.
yeah.
Did you ever attempt to put any videos
But
up to
get censored? No, we didn't actually get to do that. I think that that would have been, I wanted to do that, but we just didn't get a chance to. So.
We'll
Again-
see if Ben's does. No.
You know, one of the things that, you know, we're sort of starting to imagine a set of sort of theoretical ideas that keep rising to the fore to me from our class and from the work. This idea, this Foucauldian idea, that the way that our modern, you know, let's say in this case postmodern society works by people having internalized the rules and structures so fundamentally that the government doesn't need to do it with force. This is a perfect example, your idea of democratic self-policing. I mean, that term, you know, is just straight out of Foucault, and I've been thinking a lot about, you know, in an anarchic space, in a space that's organized without a lot of rules or seemingly not organized by rules or structures, the users themselves produce from this desire, you know, to be regulated, and the regulations mirror the regulations of the society.
Yeah.
They don't undo the regulations of the society.
It's
They're
totally
like,
true, and if you go on the European YouTube kind of Daily Motion, you'll see a lot more things that YouTube's community doesn't want to allow, but Europe's will, which is funny.
Yeah, and something that's like right at the end, I don't know if you guys can catch it, but he says that like what the guy who's doing like the voiceover thing like is really afraid of is that this actually like mode of policing will then spread to like television and other sorts of media, because like as he says, like the politician will be like, oh look, when the users are given like free reign, like this is what they evidently want, this is what they produce, this is the kind of censorship that they go for. So like why shouldn't we spread this to also to like the media as a whole? Why shouldn't we take it off of YouTube and make it more widespread? And so I don't know, I think that's a pretty interesting idea.
yeah, one more comment?
I was going to respond to this.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it, in some ways, isn't it better that the community censors itself rather than having, you know, corporate bigwigs or whatever, you know, some just little tech guy arbitrarily censoring something? I mean, I don't know. I understand what you're saying, but I think it creates there's a whole other issue there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you can always say that not every book worth banning is a book worth reading. And if we all have this internal kind of V-chip, like when we see a video, like, no, that shouldn't be on there. I don't want kids to see that, or I don't want so-and-so to see that. But in terms of whether it's a corporation doing it, like how we alluded to Google in our last video, I think that's, I don't know, I think it's just as scary if a community is doing it as a corporation. I don't know.
I mean, one of the things that they're raising is that if the community is self-policing, it's self-policing using the dominant standards as the standards. And that is not, it's not actually how democracy works.
Yeah.
I mean, democracy is not a system where the minority gets censored by the majority because the majority has been taught their whole lives that, you know, Arabs are bad. I mean, that, you know, there are protections within democracy for free speech, you know, et cetera, that don't work in this kind of rule, which is a kind of mob rule, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom?
It seems like it's not even a majority though, it's just like a small focused groups who are actually like concerned about censoring that are just so active that, you know, the majority of people don't go around flagging videos that they want censored on YouTube. They just, you know, watch some videos and they don't bother about it.
Yeah, I think that's what he was referring to as like gang warfare.
Vigilante, kind of vigilante justice. Yeah, I'm not certain that's the system that we want, right? And especially if it starts to creep out.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you guys, and we have time for one more. Yeah.